Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a number of times before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but despite their short existence thus far, they have proved to be very, very popular, and the beers that I've tried from them so far have been really, really impressive. If people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But in more recent times, they have been experimenting a little bit and trying different styles like sour beers, lagers, and a few different kinds of IPAs as well, which has been really interesting to see. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a sub-style that I haven't tried from this brewery before. It's a sub-style that I always used to really enjoy, and I'm quite curious to see how this one's going to turn out, because if memory serves me correctly, this is the first time this brewery have tried this particular type of beer. So, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head a bit north of me here in Osaka up to Shizuoka Prefecture, which is famous of course for Mount Fuji. We're going to go to Mochimune City, which is kind of just to the southwest of Shizuoka City. And that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful West Coast Brewing. So this particular beer is called DC, or the Dark Council to give it its full name. It comes in at 7% ABV, and this one is a black IPA. So as I've mentioned on the channel many times before, I do enjoy a good black IPA. There seems to be two kinds of black IPAs these days. You've got the old school West Coast ones, which tend to be mostly barley malt based, and you've also got the ones that are more kind of New Englandy, which have a bit more wheat and a bit more oat and things like that in them. So I have to say, I'm very, very curious to see where this one is going to lean. But yeah, this is a style that I'm really quite familiar with, one as I say that I really quite enjoy, so hopefully this one is as good as the other beers we've had from West Coast Brewing before. I'm quite confident it will be, because it is quite a highly rated beer, but definitely cool to return to these guys once again, and always cool to try new beer styles from breweries that you know quite well. So let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from West Coast Brewing before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated. And remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and that is being added to quite regular at the moment, of course. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about West Coast Brewing once again. So West Coast Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Mochimune City in Shizuoka Prefecture in Japan, right next to Mount Fuji. But the brewery was founded back in 2019 by Derek Baston, who's originally from Seattle in Washington State in the Pacific Northwest in the United States, and he previously worked as an architect. So Derek originally came to Shizuoka back in 2003, and he would often visit different breweries during his trips home, and he said that he'd always been inspired by the craftsmanship that went into the West Coast US beers, and he wanted to bring some of this brewing and beer culture back to Japan with him, because there weren't many doing this at the time. But apparently the idea to found his own brewery can be traced back to 2014, when he designed the Shizuoka distillery for Gaia Flow. But this was the first real look that he got inside of the brewing and distilling world, and it inspired him to visit other breweries and distilleries around the country and talk to those inside the industry. And apparently doing this made him realise that the whole process of starting his own brewery wasn't quite as daunting as he thought it was going to be. So he founded a bar in Shizuoka called 12, to basically test the water and see if the kind of beers that he wanted to brew would sell, and it quickly showed that they would be a hit, and so he decided that he was going to go for it and found his own brewery. So they found a premises in an abandoned tuna processing factory in the Mochimune marina, and they renovated it and converted it into a brewery. And this brewery is equipped with a 10 BBL system, which is around 1600 litres per brew for those of you that use the sensible metric system. I always make fun of American measurements on the channel, as you might know, but they've got 10 fermentation vessels and 2 bright beer tanks, and they produce between 12 to 20,000 litres of beer per month. And the 3 brewers at the brewery are Satoshi Niwa, who is from Japan. He's the brewing manager, and then you've got Cedric Mail, who's from France, and also Grant Scholler, who's from the US. But the brewery's mascot is, of course, the Hop Dude, who appears on all of the artwork, and the Hop Dude does lots and lots of different things, as you'll see, and this artwork is designed by Simon Henshaw, who, if memory serves me correctly, is from Manchester in England, which is a very good beer city these days as well. But over the first few years, this brewery concentrated mainly on producing different kinds of IPAs, but they're also in the process of establishing a barrel program at the moment too, and they've been opening up a number of bars and tap rooms in the last wee while as well. So this includes Bao, which is a gyoza restaurant, 12, which is an izakaya, number 3, which is a bottle shop. These are all in Shizuoka City. There's the Oasis bar in Hamamatsu as well, which is a little bit to the kind of southwest of Shizuoka City, and then here in Osaka they have Umeda 1, which is a bar, and then the Dark Lab, which is a kind of bar and restaurant type thing. So yeah, we'll need to go and check those out at some point, I think. But yeah, lots of different venues opening up from West Coast Brewing, and the only other thing I can really tell you about these guys is that as of February 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 325 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, a pretty prolific brewery considering that they've only been on the go a couple of years. But yeah, the beers that I've tried from them so far have been pretty damn solid. But this is the first black IPA that I'm having a look at from them, and hopefully it's as good as the New Englands and West Coasts and things like that that we've had from them before. I need to have a little look at some of their lagers as well, actually. So we'll see about making that happen. But yeah, that's everything I can tell you about West Coast Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one is a half-litre can. I'm not sure exactly where I bought this one. I actually bought this on my last trip to Japan at Christmas time, but I didn't get round to reviewing this one. I might have bought this beer actually at craft beer based Mother Tree, because I hadn't seen this one at Liquor Shop Asahiya, where I get most of my Japanese beers. But you can see the artwork on this one. It's pretty cool. There you can see the Hop Dude having his Dark Council there in the sort of Hogwarts or church style thing. Half-litre can, as I said, plain silver top on it, and you can see the edge of the West Coast Brewing symbol there. But yeah, this is one of the other symbols that West Coast Brewing are using these days, the WCB. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera. I guess I paid in the region of 12 or 1300 yen for this one, which is going to translate to about maybe £7 sterling, something like that, so about €8, 80 Swedish kroner, about 70 Hong Kong dollars for the beer. Japan is very cheap at the moment, of course, because the yen is quite weak, but yeah, still, I think that's pretty good value for a half-litre of craft beer. Beer is a little bit more expensive in Japan because of the malt tax and things like that, so, you know, drinking beer over here is a little bit pricier in comparison with other places, especially when you consider that wages are quite low in Japan as well. But yeah, 7% black IPA. The hops in this one are Cascade and Citra, which we know very, very well. Some of the very classic American hops. Cascade, about 8% alpha acid. It's going to give you that lovely grapefruity, sort of sultana type flavour. And then Citra is 14% alpha acid. It's going to give you a lot of kind of mango, lychee, a little bit of lemon lime and things like that as well. But in black IPAs, of course, when you've got that dark malt base, these hops will behave a little bit differently. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what it's all about then. The Dark Council from West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture. This should be quite interesting. My voice still hasn't recovered yet. It's kind of annoying, actually, so my voice will sound kind of weird in some of these videos. I think the air conditioning, as I say, it makes my throat very dry and I get lots of kind of phlegm, which isn't very nice and probably something you didn't need to know, but yeah, anyway, now you do. So yeah, you can see this beer has poured pretty much as you would expect of a black IPA. It looks very, very nice. But you can see it's come out, we've poured about 80% of the beer into the glass, but you can see it's come out with a lovely, half to 2/3 finger frothy, I would say light fawn coloured head. It's fading away to be a very kind of thin foamy layer, but yeah, nice kind of thicker, nice kind of thick rings around the edge of the glass. There's some bigger bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid there and a few lighter ones just as you move further up that, but definitely, yeah, just a kind of thin foamy layer sitting on top of the beer there. But in terms of colour, if we shine the light through this one, it's pretty much like a very dark sort of Coca-Cola, Pepsi colour. So remember, the colour of your beer is going to depend on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker style of, darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour as well, but you don't often have to care about that with different kinds of IPAs, only really fruit IPAs, to be honest with you. But yeah, lovely little bit. If you shine the light through this, it's got a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, yeah, a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola chestnutty type edge to it. And I think if this beer wasn't so dark, it would actually be crystal clear. You can kind of see that with it. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation, just one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass and a few little ones kind of coming up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look pretty nice, I have to say, and pretty much in keeping with the black IPA style. So I think on that note, we've said everything we really need to about the appearance of the beer. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what this one's going to have for us. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away that the aroma of this one isn't actually overly prominent. It's quite reserved. When you sugar it up, you get a wee bit more out of it. Yeah, a wee bit more. Yeah, when you sugar it up, you do, and it warms up and it opens up and airs up, you do start to get more and more out of it. But I have to say, compared to some of the other West Coast Brewing beers that I've had, the aroma is pretty reserved, actually. I think we're going to get a lot more out of this one in the flavour. But what I'm getting so far, I'm curious about this one. I've got a feeling just from the aroma that this one might have a little bit of wheat in it. And as I said earlier, you kind of can distinguish a little bit between the more New Englandy type black IPAs and the more West Coasty type ones. And for me, the key difference between New England and West Coast is that the West Coast uses mainly barley malt, whereas the New England type beers use a little bit more wheat and oat as well as the barley malt. And I get the feeling from this one, just the way some of the bready character comes out, that this has got a little bit of wheat in it as well. So yeah. But I will say I'm getting some of the more kind of oily West Coasty type fruits. The green component is quite, yeah, the green component is quite bright as well, which usually is an indicator of late addition hopping and dry hopping rather than early addition. But I think it's really nice. I do think that the way that this goes together is pretty interesting. So yeah, let's just break that down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So the backbone of the beer, you absolutely do get a little bit of, you do get a little bit more of a kind of roasty, toasty, bread crusty backbone in there. So you can absolutely get some of that. So yeah, roasty, toasty, well fired, bread crusty backbone wee touch of woodiness in there, some really nice little bits of nuttiness as well. You have a kind of rye bready base, absolutely, but you can smell a little bit of a smoother kind of brown bready sort of thing above that. So it's that smooth breadiness that's making me wonder if there's a little bit of wheat in this one. Yeah, definitely. And then on top of that, there's a little bit of a kind of biscuity note coming out of the beer. So yeah, a little bit of a biscuity note to this one for sure. McVitie's Digestive Biscuit, sweet caramel. So yeah, sweet caramel, McVitie's Digestive Biscuit. Yeah, I think the way that goes together is quite interesting. It's not the sweetest of black IPAs that I've come across, right enough. It does strike me as being a little bit more bready rather than anything else. Yeah, I don't know if we really need to say much more about the yeah, I don't know if we really need to say so much more about the kind of malty and yeasty side of this beer actually. Let's have a little look at the green component and the fruity side of things then to round off the aroma. For me, the green component again is quite mild, as I say. I think we're going to get more out of this beer into the when we actually taste the thing. But there's a wee touch of earthiness in there. Other than that, it's quite a nice bright floral aromaticity, good little bit of grassiness to it as well. And yeah, just the way it goes together, I think, is really quite nice. As I said, with IPAs, you get 3 types of hopping. You get early edition hopping, which gives you mainly bitterness, takes place within the first hour of the wort boil. Usually IPAs, the wort boil is about 90 minutes. So yeah, early edition hopping, first 60 minutes of the wort boil gives you mainly bitterness and a deep dank aroma. You get late edition hopping, which gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma, and that gives you quite a bright green component in terms of aroma. And then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That is dry hopping will give you all flavour and aroma, and again a very bright green component. With this beer, you're not getting so much of the deep dank green component in the aroma, and that makes me think, yeah, mainly late edition and dry hopping. So that's another factor that's making me think this might be a slightly more kind of New Englandy type black IPA rather than one of the more old school West Coasty type ones. Yeah, on the fruity side of things though, this is quite an interesting one. Because you can definitely get the Cascade in this. You do get that little bit of, grapefruity character. You get a little bit of the kind of sultana and things like that that you would obviously get from Cascade. But I'm also getting quite a wee bit of like blackberry, black currant out of this one. And that's, Simcoe for me is usually one of the hops that goes really well in black IPAs. It's one of these ones that can give you, blackberry, blueberry and figs and things like that you would always want in a black IPA. Citra and Cascade obviously work as well, but yeah, I would have thought that with this one, the red fruitiness is a bit more pronounced than other black IPAs I've had before that have used these hops. So for me, that's a little bit kind of surprising actually. But yeah, fruity wise, black currants, blackberries, a little bit of a slightly more sharper note in there as well. And yeah, as I say, sultanas, bit of grapefruit. Yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, the malty side of this one, it's a little bit more mild, more rye bready, and I'm just surprised at how reserved, I guess you could say, that the aroma of this beer has turned out to be. So interesting stuff, but it gets a thumbs up from me for sure. So yeah, quite excited to try this one. As I always say, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But yeah, this one is the Dark Council, a 7% black IPA from West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan. My first go at a black IPA from these guys, so let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers, kanpai. Yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this does give you a lot more complexity than in the flavour than you would think it's going to from the aroma. The aroma really is quite different and quite reserved in comparison to the flavour profile, but I'm going to say it is a good black IPA. Back in the day, I often used to say that black IPAs really needed to be double to give you the full complexity of flavour. Some black IPAs I found could work at sort of 6.5%, 7%, but I always preferred this style to be around 8%. This one for me, it's very, very light and it's very well done, but as I say, this is one of the kind of more, it's one of the less complex black IPAs I think I've come across, because I think this is a beer style that really benefits from having that wee bit more complexity in the malt base. But this one is quite drinkable, and you know, the black IPA for me is one, it's kind of like a bridging style. If you're going to have an imperial stout to finish off, you know, you might want to have a black IPA to kind of lead up to it. That's kind of where I would rate this style, but I've always enjoyed them. But certainly this is a more bready and less kind of chewy, caramelly sort of black IPA, this one. But I like it. I do like it for sure. I'd be very curious to see these guys try a double black IPA. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Perfect pour. But this is nice. This is quite nice. I do wonder if the DC is a reference to the DC comics, of course. That wouldn't surprise me, actually. Not so big on my comic book stuff, but there's a lot of people in Japan are, of course. But yeah, that is a nice, that is a very nice black IPA. Yeah. So let's break it down and describe the flavour a bit more in depth for you then. So we've given you a kind of overview. Middle third of your palate. The backbone of this beer is that roasty, toasty, well-fired, black bread crusty note there, and that lingers into the aftertaste. When you go further forward on that middle third of your palate, yeah, you get a little bit of woodiness, of course. So yeah, there's a little bit of woodiness comes out of the beer. And I will say as well that I was talking about this one not being so caramelly and stuff, but the more you drink of it, the more it sweetens up, which is interesting. But yeah, roasty toasty, well fired bread crust in the base. Further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of woodiness in there, get a little touch of nuttiness as well, and then you also have there's a nice layer of kind of rye bread, which is great. Yeah, nice little bit of rye bread in there. And then you also have more of a kind of wholemeal sweet brown bready character sitting on top of that as well. And it does feel as if there's just a little bit of nuttiness and woodiness and things kind of embedded into that, which I think is great. So above all of that, you do have, on top of all of that, you've got some of the brown sugary notes in there. So you've got a layer of like roasty toasty brown sugar coming out of this one. So yeah, that roasty toasty brown sugar's in there. You have a little bit of an almost leathery brown sugary character as well. And usually when you have leathery brown sugar, that's an indicator that that's usually an indicator that you've got a slightly longer wort boil, but I don't think that's so much of the case here. It doesn't feel so leathery and dry as you would get from a longer wort boil. But yeah, roasty toasty brown sugar, a little bit of a more leathery layer, and then in the dead centre of your palate you've got a little circle there where it's quite sweet and caramelly, and that is of course the boozy part of the beer coming out. And as I say, the more that you drink of this one, the more that it sweetens up. Yeah, but I think this one's quite nicely balanced actually. It finds, when I think that this one is 7%, quite a few black IPAs that I've had have been around 6. And those are the ones that tend to be a bit more bready. When you go up to that 8%, that's when you get more of the sweetness. This one actually builds a good middle ground. So yeah, it makes you think a little bit. But the other thing I would add to that middle third of the palate is you do get a wee bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuity type note coming out from that boozy circle in the middle of your tongue. The further out into the extremities of that middle third of your palate, but it's nice. It is nice how that goes together. I think we said everything we need to about the middle third of the palate. Then let's move to the back third of the palate. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit of kind of rye bread in the base there. Then you get the wholemeal brown bready character sitting on top of that. The base of the back third of the palate is that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust again. And as I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just a little bit drier and a little bit more bitter and stuff like that. But yeah, sitting above that, you've got the rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and a little bit taller and kind of more airy and stuff like that. Then you've got the wholemeal bready character sitting above that, which again is lighter and more airy. And then you can feel just a little bit of an almost, you can feel some of that toasty character just sitting on top of all of that. And then above everything else on that back third of your palate, you start to get some of the more yeasty characters coming out of this beer. So let's just look at those yeasty flavours then. So yeah, the yeasty flavours are quite a big thing in the black IPA. So for me, you've got that dense, sweet, doughy rye bread in the middle of the kind of yeasty flavours there, but then around that you get those you get like a sweeter wholemeal brown bready character, and then just around that you get a little bit of toastiness there. But definitely on that back third of your palate you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together. And yeah, the way that goes together I think is really quite nice. And then on the malty and yeasty side of things, I think that's everything we really need to say, to be honest with you. The malt base on this one really does grow on you the more you drink of it. You get more sweetness and things like that out of it the further into the aftertaste that you go. But I think it plays the 7% card very well, if we can say that. It's not the sweetest one and it's not the breadiest one. It does find that middle ground quite nicely. But I do think this beer, as good as it is, but I think it would be even better if they just took the recipe and amped it up and made it 8% and made it lean more toward that sweet side of things. I think they've got a solid base though. Let's go on to the hoppy side of the beer. So the green component, in the back corners of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, you get a wee touch of a herbal character, of course, so a little bit of herbal note there. But as you push further forward, you get some nice floral aromaticity out. This beer's got a wee touch of that piney resiny note to it and a wee bit of spice, but yeah, nice bright floral aromaticity. And then round the curve of the tongue, the front curve of the tongue, you do get more of the grassy notes out of this one. So it's quite a nice wet grassiness there, and also a wee bit of a zesty sort of thing to it as well, which I do like. And that kind of lingers there into the aftertaste too. But yeah, green component on this one, it's a wee bit hard to determine how much early edition hopping and late edition hopping and stuff like that you have. But I think it seems relatively balanced. I think there's a wee bit of everything going on in this one, but it's certainly not the most hoppy bitter of black IPAs that I've had. But let's focus on that front third of your palate and the fruity side of the beer then. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get that bit of bready build up, rye bread in the base, the brown bread on the top. Then the base of that front third of your tongue, you've got the toasty bread crust, the rye bread, the brown bread, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at the fruity side of things then, just to round off. So for me, the fruity side of things is kind of what you would expect. It's not quite as berry leaning as I thought it was going to be from the aroma, but still, at the back of that front 30 palette, you've got some nice kind of grapefruity notes, which will be there from both the Citra and the Cascade. As you move further forward, you do get a little bit of a more kind of oily sultana type character out of this one. You can pick up little hints of mango as well, which will be from the Citra. Yeah, what else is there? There is a wee touch of like a figgy sort of thing going on as well. But yeah, as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you're definitely getting a little bit more of a... yeah, you're definitely getting a wee bit more of a kind of, I would say, like figgy base, a little bit of black currant and stuff like that as well. There's definitely a wee bit of a red fruity or berry fruity type note coming out of this one, which is always quite nice. I always enjoy that a little bit with these beers. But yeah, I think they've done a solid job in this. A really nice 7%er in terms of the black IPA style. I'm not surprised because West Coast Brewing do know what they're doing, so I'm not surprised they've pulled off this style pretty well as well. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour of this one. Let's round off with a look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, mid-bodied beer, right in the middle of the spectrum, for sure. Carbonation has a little bit of crispness to it, but overall, this beer feels quite clean. Yeah, it feels quite clean. It feels a little touch oily as well. And again, one of the big things that's emphasised in Japan is drinkability when it comes to craft beer. So it makes sense that these are clean and drinkable. In terms of the IBU count in this one, a little bit hard to say. I think it's maybe around 60-ish, 60 or 70. It's got a bit of dryness and stuff from the malt base, so you could easily conflate the roasty toastiness with some of the hoppy bitterness, but I think about 60 IBUs overall is quite reasonable for this one. The malt base has a bit of roasty toastiness underneath, pardon me, a bit of smoothness in the middle and a little bit of sweetness on top. Then you've got some of the nice juicy fruity characters pushing their way out of this one as well, and it's got the kind of old school grapefruity note, but also that wee bit of berry note that you expect from a black IPA as well. But a really nicely done beer, this one. Certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but I do think taking this one up to just the way the flavours come out of this one, if you took this up to an 8%er and did it as an Imperial, I think you'd get a wee bit more out of this actually. It could be interesting as a 10% triple black IPA as well, come to think of it. But overall, I'd say it has a little bit of the New Englandy note to it, but the more that I've drank of it, it strikes me as being more West Coasty. It does the West Coasty character. Takes a bit of time to come out of this one, I would say. But I like it, and that is the main thing. So let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Dark Council, a 7% black IPA from the wonderful West Coast Brewing in Mochimune, Shizuoka Prefecture here in Japan. And yeah, definitely cool to try another different style from these guys. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from West Coast Brewing as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slanja, Skål, cheers, Kampai. Check out my social media, check out West Coast Brewing's social media, and I will see you guys in another review very soon. Slanja, Skål, and cheers.